Hi, you guys. Rebecca here, Sirius Blue, and welcome back to another episode of the Bringing Light to the Darkness series. And it has been a while. You're not imagining it if you think it's been a while since I've been on the channel. I've been doing some pretty deep inner work, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Where have I been, and what have I been working with? Today's the day where I'm feeling it, the nervousness. I was just in meditation, kind of getting my mind ready to talk more openly about these things, thinking, wow, I'm doing this. This is the video I never thought I would make. This is me talking about my mother's bloodline and things I've alluded to in past videos that I've not discussed. Bloodline entities and demonic forces, and how that created a trauma blueprint in me because I was born into it, to being trafficked later into covert ops programming. So that's a kind of, I think, try and keep bringing it around to that point. So I've also, I've spoken too about my father's work with Black projects himself, with the deep state. And I wanted toward the end of this, I'll also be talking about my godfather, who was working side by side with my dad with a top secret clearance, and what impact that had on me. What did that lead to for me? So again, in this video, I'm kind of offering a portrait of my earliest life and how that relates to later abduction, and what are the dark ops programmers looking for in their candidates for my lab and secret space program. In my experience, doesn't necessarily mean that's a common blueprint, but I know for me, this was absolutely having everything to do with how I was vetted and wanted later for everything I've been talking about on this channel up until now. So yeah, if I'm going slow and having some pauses for breath, just hang out with me. As I said in my first video, just take my hand, because this is hard. This is stuff that's hardest, the stuff that's closest to home, I think that's hardest to talk about. Because, if you've got abusers and perpetrators and programmers and handlers that are not related to you, it's somehow, at least in my own mind and heart, easier to work with than if that level of betrayal was in your natal family. It is, it's more painful. That's what have discovered as I've put the pieces of my story back together bit by bit, and that's ongoing. That's ongoing. So in September, I think my last video is in August, and it was pretty heavy. It was pretty heavy. I don't think we're going graphic at all today, even though the subject matter, it's kind of dark. Yeah, it's very dark. There is not anything lurid I'm going to describe, I don't think, today. I'm not going there. So in September, I had some memory fields opening up with my mother, my father, and my godfathers, like one after the other, things that I didn't know or didn't kind of packed up somewhere else. And it was like, it felt like being out at sea, like treading water and just gasping for breath, and the next wave is coming, and I'm just like, and then there's another wave and another wave. And by the end of September, I was like flattened. I was like really, it was a lot all at once on my nervous system for sure. So, and I was also getting messages from my grandfather, who's been dead for decades, my mother's father, and he's in here. Believe it or not, he has come in to speak with me, and some of the things he was asking for, well, forgiveness of some sort, but also he seemed to support me speaking more openly about this, which I found shocking. So we'll get into all of this as we roll through here. And I'll talk more about healing. How does one become well? What is the path to wellness and recovery if you've been through this amount of trauma? Which, you've got to be asking that question. It's something I I wonder too, you know, like, am I doing the best I can for myself? That's my job here now. So it's true enough. I do have paper notes here because this stuff is like the thing that, like, when you grow up in a family where things are not, you know, the story you're given is that 1 + 1 = 3, and that white is black and black is white, and that you're not ever supposed to know any different. This stuff is like, okay, when you finally start talking about it and, well, remembering it, knowing it clearly and openly with yourself, and then start speaking about it, it's like, okay, I don't want to just go blank in the middle of all this. So I just needed some reminders. This helps me to make these videos. Okay. This is great. I'm so glad I'm here. I'm so glad I'm here, and I, you know, made it, you know, and I have done a hell of a lot of work in the past few months. So this video is helping me break free in some really important way. I feel that. I feel like this video is pivotal to me moving forward. And as much as I make these videos to share, you know, I get messages and emails from people that say, wow, that really helped me. I didn't really understand what was going on for me. This is their story, you know, like that something I shared was useful to them. That helps me keep going with the videos. But these things are healing for me. When we tell our story, there's a healing component that happens that cannot be denied. And it's also breaking free of the heavy programming. Don't see, don't hear, don't say, don't speak. Don't know the truth. I mean, we can see that programming within the culture at large in many ways. So, and I'm also in training with more and more light as I really look into the dark scripts that have underwritten my life and air them out. The light is so big in my own life, and I'm so grateful for that. So with that in mind, you know, holding all that follows here in light, holding all that follows here in light. May we be blessed with much light here on the 1212 portal. Yay. So going into, leading into my mom's material with my mother. And it's not just my mom, it's that bloodline and that side of the family. I've already said that the programs, the dark ops programs, are looking for kids who have a propensity to dissociate, and we might say a gift to dissociate. That comes from being in a family where there was extreme abuse going on. And even more so if it's generational abuse that's come down over decades, even centuries, and just on and on and on, perpetuated violence in the family. Why is that? Because the programs want you to be able, they want you to be able to dissociate, so you are split and fractured, so you don't necessarily have a memory of the things that you were doing in this programmed altar. In my case, I was, you know, brought into super soldier program, and all kinds of crazy stuff happened there. You're really not supposed to remember what happened to you there. And they want people who don't have a strong sense of self-identity and identity, but have a more porous sense of self as a kid. And that was definitely me. And I will be describing more about, you know, what goes on to create that in a child. So this was, you know, MK Ultra and its spin-off programs, Monarch Mind Control Programming, all the trauma-based mind control programs funded by the CIA have this in mind to fracture the mind of the child or the subject. Maybe it's an adult. They do that with adults too. Children are just so pliable to begin with. That is the formal program that you would be put in to fracture the mind. It's through torture and trauma that this occurs. But in the minds of the deep state, the shadow government, if you're already broken, preferably as soon as you come in, or in utero is the case with me, all the better, because their job is so much easier. It's really desirable to just have kids that come from difficulty in family life and don't have strong attachment bonds with caregivers. This also allows the child, for me, for example, to bond with anybody who is going to show care or show affection, or like, hey, I'm special. Um, yeah. So I would say that generational, from what I've seen with my family, generational trauma creates embedded dissociative tendencies, which getting into my mom now, my mom is definitely fractured, no question. And I would say she has, dissociative identity disorder itself. I always have felt that something really horrible happened to her. Never, could quite put my finger on what, until of course I got older and woke up and was able to look more clearly at the story in what I had seen growing up. I may have mentioned this in other videos briefly, that she's had violence, that she was violently abusive to my brother and I when we were small. And interestingly, I think I mentioned this before, that I don't remember my brother being abused. He doesn't remember me being abused. So here's this dissociative amnesia, because I know we're both telling the truth. And you can't be in a tiny house like we had back in the 70s and not know that your sib is being hit or beat up in the next room, smacked around. The kids get that, they hear that, they know that. But for both of us, like, we've talked about this, and I have blank. I have no memory of that. And of course, my own experiences, I have pieces, I don't have the whole story. That may never change, I don't know. But they are coming back. Like I mentioned in September, things keep kind of trundling in. I wish sometimes it would be a little more titrated so I could, I guess I'm getting it all at once. So mom, yeah, there's so much to this. She also, like, she drives places and doesn't know how she got there, or she goes places in the car and doesn't remember where she went. And this is it might seem not that significant, but it's a sign of she was dissociating. She was gone somewhere else. Some other part of her was literally driving. So that's just one small piece. There's when there's I'll get into more of the entity stuff and this and that here shortly, but when there's even something as simple as my brother and I, being violently abused, physically abused, like the child learns, I learned that 1 + 1 must be 3, even though I see in front of me that 1 + 1 is 2. So there's an inversion of truth that goes on in the household. And many of you may be really familiar with this from your own experiences in the family. Like, there's a pink elephant in the living room, the proverbial pink elephant that no one's talking about. No one else sees an elephant, so there must not be an elephant there. Do you know what I mean? And that really relates to everything that follows. So once there's this internal schism in the mind of the child, or this cognitive dissonance about what's actually going on and what's normalized, that child begins to lose its sense of grounding in self. There is almost a kid with no sense of self. And that was definitely me. Because we're not following our own internal compass anymore. And we start to believe the lie, and that's where we go astray. And children have, like I said, such a porous sense of identity and self to begin with. If there's no proper attachment bonding with the primary caregivers, things really start going south quickly, very fast. So how did my mom get this way? I'm not done talking about her. It's hard. Like, I feel like, hey, I'm sorry, Mom, I gotta tell the story. We're trained not to tell the family secrets. Come on, right? Like, am I right? So winding up to that, but I want to say, like, I see this isn't just a one-of-a-kind situation. Where did Mom, how did she get that way? Well, her father. And how did he get that way? Well, that's what we're going to dive deeper and deeper into here. When I was small, my mom would get up into my face, ready to strike me. And she would be pointing her finger like this. And she had these she looked reptilian. And I thought this when I was 5, that she looked reptilian. She had these beady eyes. And just the pupil would get really small and cold and hard in her eyes, you know, and I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. And she seemed demonic. She seemed demonic. Those are not words I would have ever been able to verbalize as a little kid. No way. But she scared me. I would hear her footfalls coming down the hall, and I did not know what it was going to get. And if it was going to be demon mommy or nice mommy, because I just always called her a Jekyll and Hyde kind of personality, not knowing what you were going to get from her from moment to moment. And that's a scary thing, again, causing cognitive dissonance in the child. What's going to happen here, you know, from day to day. Let's see, I had forgotten all of this, a lot of this, really, truly. 2013, I went back to, I live in the West, and I grew up in New England. I went back to New England for a visit with my brother's family, and we rented a cottage on Cape Cod. It's kind of the New England thing. You just do that in the summer for a week with my mom. And one night, my mother and I and my young niece, my brother's 5-year-old child, were alone at the cottage. This is important to my story because this is where I finally woke up to what I was actually seeing. My mom was baking in the kitchen. I was standing there at the counter with her, and little niece, 5 years old, is in the other room. She's saying, "Graham, can you come help me?" Meaning my mom. My mom helped raise her. And my mother, I could just, it's like this switch flipped in her mind, and there was like steam coming out of her ears, and she just looked like this. She was overtaken completely, and her footfalls like lead in her feet, bang, 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 in slow motion going down the little hallway to the bedroom. And I was just starting to freeze inside immediately, just like I was becoming a kid myself, like going down this tunnel and the floor is falling out below me, and there's no ground. I'm just falling away and going into shock. I saw her, my mother, just start tearing at her clothes, tearing her clothes, and just threw her across the room as she was striking her. And it all just happened really quickly and yet in slow motion. Do you know how this happens in some part of your life where this was the case? My mom came back in to the kitchen. I was frozen like ice. I was dissociated. I was gone. And she said, "Look at my cake. Isn't this nice?" And that was the moment where everything broke open for me in 2013. Everything I'd put in this sort of vacuum sealed vault about my mom, about what actually happened in my childhood. And that was the start of my awakening, because I needed to go back to New England so I could get the truth, so I could find the truth. And I have worried about my niece so much. We're in touch now, and I'm trying to bring light into her life because I know she's been exposed to this with my mother, and I know what that did to me. Hard. But it ripped back the veil, which I really needed, so I could see what was going on in that moment, because my mother's personality shifted completely and she had no memory of what happened. I've not been back to see my mother. I've not been back to New England since, and that's 7 years ago and counting. So again, the nice mommy, nasty mommy coming up, there she is coming out of, an abusive scenario. Isn't my cake lovely? Oh my God. Talk about crazy making. So I spent the next couple of days after that happened, before my flight out, just in complete shock. And I went back to Colorado, and my life started falling apart. My whole emotional state became very unstable for a while. It needed to, I needed to go into that place. So what I want to say about this is that there's a family entity in the bloodline, and that it's passed down through generational sexual abuse. And it seems to pass down more from male to male to male through the patriarchal side of the bloodline. So the entity, and I have seen these working, when my uncle was abusing me, her brother, as a child, I would see entities working within him and through him and around him. Same with my grandfather. And it was the same forms of cloud-like it's like a smokeless or a fireless cloud of dark. It is like smoke with these kind of yellow eyes, or that's how I see it anyway. Um, the entities work in collusion with demons, or in this case with them, there's entities create the ground, let's say, for a possession to come in this case, a shape-shifting reptilian entity to possess the perpetrator, possess the abuser. And that also runs down through the bloodline, which it's very frightening. And it's not like so dramatic like you'd see in the movies. But as a kid, I told you I would see the change in my mom and not understand it. Of course, as a child, you don't know how to articulate something that crazy. Even as an adult, I mean, it's crazy. Like that's like out of the movies, not real life. And the demonic being that I have seen there in these episodes with family members, it's a shapeshifter, it's reptilian, but I've also seen like this dark maned, like black, sleek black maned, with almost like a beard, but has almost like a dog-like face, like Anubis. Seen that coming through, and then sometimes it's like the head of a bloody devilish demon thing. I mean, I know that's scary and crazy, and how could I be seeing that? But yeah, it's the point being there that it shapeshifts, and the entities are more like they're feeders, and they give instructions to the abuser about like how not to kill the child and other things. It's a high art, but the high art is high dark art. You know, the demons themselves are much higher energy and much more refined in a dark way, and they're conjured by dark magic. And that's, like I said, been running through the bloodline, and I'm going to get deeper and deeper into that as we go on. And they work together. The entities sort of create the ground for the demon to come in and possess. Yeah. 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 In that pause, I just went, I cannot believe I'm talking about this openly. And it's such a liberation. This is such a fucking liberation to talk about what I see. Oh, thanks for listening. So I've seen that shape-shifting being in my mother, and I'm sorry I have to say that. It's hard. It's really hard. My uncle, my grandfather, all on the same side of the family. In fact, I made a clay figure. You know, I have a long history as a studio artist. I made a clay bust of this head that was it's very dark. This is when I was about 19 or 20. And this being that I described with the dark mane and the sort of Anubis looking entity came through the clay. And when I look back at that now, it's like I did know. That is there. I did see that then, even though I had no words to say what I saw. How could I have words for that? No. And so what happened in September, I'll just share this briefly. With my mom, you know, the memories that came up. I'm a meditator, and it's really what opened up my intuition. In fact, I got on the meditation journey right after 2013. Bang, came back to Colorado, falling apart. I'm at rock bottom, and I've got to turn toward all this stuff rather than away from it. I can't keep running from it, or I'm not going to get well. I'm going to get worse. Started meditating. So at the end of, you know, I'm in meditation these days about 2 hours a day. First thing of the day, and that's the stability of my life, really, and the beauty and the light of my life. The devotion of my life is spiritual practice. But toward the end of meditation is sometimes sometimes in the middle of meditation I get visions, but it was the end of meditation 3 or 4 days in a row in September, later September, that I saw my mom picking me up from my crib and holding me into the sky and shaking me, strangling me, screaming at me, shaking me so hard I thought I would die. I didn't know about that. Yeah, after a few days in a row, I had to admit that that probably did happen. And she was not herself. She was a different being. So I don't know why I couldn't have, it's painful. That's why I didn't want to know about it. You know, given everything I do remember very clearly from the rest of my childhood with her. It's not shocking. But I will say with these entities, their instruction to have the child strangled seems to be very common. Because I think with strangulation, you can, sorry, this vaguely graphic for a moment, you can, or just kind of blunt, you can bring a child closer to death without killing it. Easier than if you were to leave a lot of marks or blows, hits, strikes, lacerations, and still get the same amount of what some people would call louche out of the child. So excuse that sort of graphic interlude. I know I was going to quite go there, but I think it's important to know about what we might call the technology of that abuse and what they're doing. And they're feeding. There are entities feeding all through this, all through these experiences. So the baby becomes a gateway, and it's kept open by ongoing abuse. So the baby becomes a gateway for other forces to then use the kid. In my case, you know, allowing for more of the activity I've spoken of with the grays to happen, or, you know, once the kid is an innocent, and that innocence and that the child is pure light, a newborn kid, pure light. Babies, toddlers, they're pure light. That is like a gold mine for the dark forces who are, you know, masterminding these operations, let's say. So all of this would have made easier my covert ops abduction later on when I was older, you know, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so I hope that is starting to make some things a little bit clearer, even though I don't know. I know this stuff is pretty out there. But I think that the creating of that portal, you know, the gateway created by extensive trauma in the system is important for how they were able to take me and use me for so many things so easily. The porous nature of the child. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what, you know, it's interesting about, I had to dig in, like what actually is, doing some research, you know, and I went to the Bible. What is a demon? Satan's fallen angels. If you look in various books of the Bible, Satan's fallen angels. I think the etymology of the word demon is not necessarily dark, but somehow it became that way. Like as I was trying to like, my linear mind is trying to like figure this out with 3D thinking. Like, okay, so where is this coming from? How far back in the bloodline does it go? Anyway, I think it feels to me like what I am calling the demon is they are much higher level beings, and the older it is in the bloodline, like the longer this has been going on, the more power it has. So then we're going to get into the bloodline itself and sort of the patriarch of the, you know, the closest in. I mean, we're just talking about a few generations here. This isn't going like way back into, you know, 1700s, where this lineage is traced to by a distant cousin back into Germany. So this tendency in my mother, though, comes from her father, who probably, you know, did similar things to her. I don't have record of that. I do know when my mother, when I was little, used to talk about dark shadow figures that scared her and that were at the foot of her bed when she was a kid trying to go to sleep. I wonder what that is. Just as she has no memory of abusing my brother and I, she doesn't seem to have memory either. We're talking about dissociation in the family here. She doesn't have memory of her father abusing her either. When you ask her about her dad, man, it's all halcyon. It's all beautiful, rose-colored glasses all the way forwards and back. My father was a wonderful man. My mom has wonderful qualities. I'm sure her dad did too. And I know I'm really focusing on a certain not so light quality in the family here. That's the interesting thing, is all this stuff is hidden right under normalcy. Like You wouldn't even know it's there. And that's the amazing thing. It's hidden in plain sight in normal American society. You know, people who send their kids to school and maybe even go to church, and yeah, they go on vacations, they go shopping at the mall, they go out to dinner together. So, but 1 + 1 is still 3. Crazy making. So, yeah. So the bloodline, you know, her dad, my grandfather, was a reverend. Oh yes. Oh yes. He went to Harvard Seminary, the whole bit. This was, you know, part of his legacy was as a man of God, so to speak. German through and through, this unbroken, all of the German patriarchs in the family married other German women. And it's, you know, I have to say, the SSP seems to favor certain lineages, and there, you know, there are tons of Germans in space. You know, the Reich were probably the first to be active in space even before World War II. And they featured heavily in, like, for example, with where I was at the moon base, Germans. The only humans I saw there were, I don't think they like to be called Nazis, but NAZI, German nationalists. So there's something to the bloodlines. I don't pretend to have it all figured out, but this did make me a target. I know that's true. So her father was a reverend, and oh, here we go. This is a bit graphic. Not too bad, maybe. I don't know. It's sad. He gave me a black baptism when I was small, which is a form of sodomy in the name of dark forces. And I did have just terrific flashbacks of that back in, yeah, September. I just got hammered. I mean, it would be good for me to go back into my star chart and see what was going on in September. But that, I'm not going to go into too deep, but I just wanted to share that, you know, if you, again, it's opening the child to the dark forces as soon as possible when that child comes in. And I do feel like in some ways all of this was predicated before I came in. I didn't used to believe in that, like that a script could be all written out in some ways for that child's life. Although as we become adults, obviously we're writing our own script, but our soul has a certain agenda, and dark forces have a way of gaining power in insidious ways that I think help us write contracts we wouldn't necessarily care to make. Yeah, there's a lot to that. And again, I don't pretend to understand or have definitive answers on any of it. But certainly since it's affected my life so much, I do spend time with these topics, reflecting on things. So, oh gosh, he was brought up in a family where there was ritual abuse happening. And I feel like because Walter I just said his name. He had visited me in different visions and spoken with me from, you know, I mean, he's been dead for decades, but I see dead people rather easily. I mean, people pay me for my services as a seer. And that's in fact part of what I was doing was in the SSP was psychic work. So fortunately, I'm still able to have those gifts in tow here with me, fully on board. I feel like my impression was that he went into divinity because he was truly trying to connect with Holy Spirit and wanted to break the chains of this in his family. He was raised by Catholic and Quaker parents. And like I said, yeah, really, he studied at Harvard Seminary, full scholarship. But then what happened, he signed up at age 50. He went to World War II and served as a chaplain for 2 years in France and Germany. Yeah, in the belly of the beast. And he lost his faith in God there and regressed to the dark side. And I have to read, this is a message I'm going to read. It's from early, let's see, this is from September 1st. And I want to share this in his words because he says this better than I could possibly have paraphrased. So he came to me at the end of a long meditation, and he said, "I've been waiting to talk to you. That time is here. That time is now." Yeah, I'll just read what I've written here. I write things in a journal longhand, and then I transcribe them into digital. And here he's going back and forth at first between what I say is his nasty entity self and his regular guy self, and then his more like higher self. And what I want to say to him is, party's over, and then I say his name. Time's up. I've got no more time to spare, and from the looks of it, nor do you. But I also realize all at once that this is his liberation for him too. Oh, this is a liberation for him too. I say to him, no one will be able to feed anymore. And he says, I know. I've been waiting for you to stop it. It was awful over there. And he's meaning all this shit in the bloodline. I was floored when this came through. I've been waiting for you to stop it. It was awful over there, meaning the trenches in World War II, where he was serving as a chaplain. So much death and ruin, sickness, accident, bullet wounds, infection, disease. We were overridden in the tents. No one was there to help us. It was a hell filled with the wretched and the weary, the wounded, and also the wicked. You have no idea what happens to the soul during war, he continued. Many minions come out to feed. They are human, and some are not human. There are those I could not see, but knew were around me, meaning entities. We were overrun, and I was overrun too. It was a dangerous time. Many plagues were unleashed. Like time bombs, they were built to detonate later. Scripts and scripts of pages were written about humanity, about how humanity would end, given over to the archive of the ages. It's like a timeline, a dark timeline was being seeded over there, is what he's saying. These dark times, well, to what I witnessed, I would say, there have been and are those who only seek to destroy human life. I became part of that. And then I see a gray, rainy, muddy landscape permeated by emotional heaviness, darkness. There's much action and also inaction. Those who suffer and those who are paralyzed, shocked, unable. And this is what I've taken firsthand or first person from my journal. I see insanity, bloodbath, open wounds, men crying out, anguish all around, every side a scene from Dante's hell. And then he continues, my grandfather, hell on earth was created. The war was won and lost by satanic forces. I joined their team, so polluted and overtaken, I could do nothing else. The Lord didn't come to save me. I lost my faith. I became angry, petty, fearful, and ashamed. I asked for God's grace, and I received hell. I lost my faith. I didn't care about anything after that. I abandoned love, and I fell into disgrace. So, says it better than I could have. And that message from him, that visit really moved me. It touched me. And it helped me, it helped me understand what was going on in a more nuanced way and what he was struggling with. But after that, boy, he came back from the war and he was working with dark energies when he came back. And remember, he was an adept working with high-level energies, learning that through his studies of, Christianity, but then inverting those energies and invoking demonic forces instead. He was a different man, I think, in many ways. I became an alcoholic. I do know this. This is in the opened book of things people talk about in my family. One of the few that we know he had a severe alcohol problem and became violent with his wife, and I suspect also his children. And he had asked for forgiveness in another long channel. He said, forgive me, almost like asking God, forgive me, God. I didn't know what I was doing. And in some ways, I mean, we could say he was totally overtaken, and how much of what he was doing, was he present? Was he not present? I don't know. I think he's very much responsible for his own actions. He was definitely working with dark forces. So do you now see how my mom got the way she was? Her own mother was my grandmother, was hospitalized many times when my mom was small. And I feel like there was already things going on in that family. They gave her, my grandmother, shock treatments back in the 1940s, in the brain, trying to cure her of hysteria or something. I think she was witnessing dark things before her husband went to the war. So I feel for them. I mean, this is tough stuff that I'm talking about in this family that, blue-blooded New England family, he's a minister and supposed to be keeping his flock together. One of his churches completely collapsed. That's why he went into the war, because they didn't have any money. I said to my mother, why did his church collapse? I don't really get a good answer, but I have a few ideas. Anyway, this is just, again, creating a pretty detailed family portrait, although I'm racing through it in a way. There's so many things I'm leaving out. I mean, you talk about this. This is deep stuff. We could talk about this all night long. I prefer not to. But how the trauma blueprint is passed on, I think you're getting that very, very, very clearly. What it means, though, coming back to me and being vetted for dark ops, is that I was just splitting off early. I don't know if I could have escaped that, given the portrait I painted, of all this other stuff coming down and what I was born into. So, and all of it was normalized in my life. Yeah. So drawing closer to the end of some things about the family. Thanks for listening. I know it's helpful to me. It's not easy, but it's helpful to me. Just pausing for a moment, just holding some light through all this and asking to bring light to that which I am speaking of here. Sending light into the bloodline so we can be liberated from this pain and this darkness and this suffering and this imprisonment. Yeah. As I move on into my mother's brother, my uncle. I'm not going to talk too much about him because I'm getting over this topic, and he's the most sadistic in the family. He really absorbed the dark forces and carried the torch on the torch. Yeah. Sadism all the way, man. He is one sick fucker. Yeah. I mentioned him obliquely in my first video, didn't say his name, just probably said a friend of the family, as per the violence I talked about there, the anomalous abuse. And you can maybe remember that from the first video or go back and watch it. I will not repeat that here. I want to illustrate, though, how it came down from my grandfather to his son and to his son. So I think I've mentioned my mom's brother, this guy, my uncle, previously. He has all the Nazi stuff in his basement. He collects like flags and helmets and garb and books and listens to Rush Limbaugh all day and wears camo and has his own private cemetery in the backyard. Has a baby that died that no one ever talks about. Painting a picture without saying exactly what I'm talking about. When like I said, when he abused me, oh my God, it was sick. And I could see the feeders all around him and like in his ear, telling him what to do. And just so degraded. I've received messages from his lower aspects. He's still alive. He's in his late 80s. He doesn't have much time left. And I dedicate the merit of my healing journey so that this stuff can be liberated, not just from my family, but this whole fucking timeline. Yeah. He's been thrown out of his church. Was thrown out of the Air Force. He's a caricature that I can't even explain, but definitely the dark arts he took to easily. He's carrying that on. And then his son, I remember clearly, molesting me, which is, throughout my childhood. He was 10. I want to say he was a good bit older than me, way old enough to know better. And that's light, abuse compared to everything else I'm talking about. That's like a fly on the wall. It's nothing. But I want to share that because so clearly how through the patrilineal line there, we're getting this, we're getting this dark ritual abuse coming down through, and it is aligned with ritual, and it's very, it's not haphazard, it's not sloppy. Those people know what they're doing. So, and all of it behind that beaver cleaver facade of normalcy. Look at my cake. Isn't it lovely? Oh my God. I used to think I was the crazy one. I ended up being hospitalized, suicidal, and depressed, wanting to get out of this life. I may have mentioned that in other videos. In my late teens, early 20s, I thought I was crazy. I was called crazy. But I think I was the one who saw what the fuck was going on. And it's taken me this long to talk about it. So again, taking it all into the light. Okay. Wow. Thank you so much. I feel like boulders of oppression have been lifted. Thanks for helping me carry them off my shoulders. And I have thought, when I made this video, what if someone in my family sees? Yeah, what if they do? What if they do? And what if they have to think twice about the storyline? I hope they do. Yeah. I'm tired of carrying this by myself. The beautiful part is when one person wakes up, the whole house of cards falls apart. Yeah. And from the looks of it, from what I channeled and what I received, very passionate messages. There were many more messages that I received from my grandfather that want this to fall apart, that want this to end. And I'm hoping that I am contributing to that today. And at least by redeeming myself and healing my own life, that does volumes for the bloodline, for sure. So, got some time left here. How's everybody doing? That felt like a lot of detail, even though I feel like I raced through it. Oh, we're not done with the high strange. We're done with demons. Be fucking done with demons forever. Let's be done with demons. All right, we're going to talk about flipping the channel, to my godfather. Now, this goes into very strange synchronicities toward the end of the story. So godfather, I've mentioned before, my dad worked for Lockheed Martin. Back in the 70s, it was a smaller company based in New England. It was bought out in the 80s while he still worked there, and while my godfather still worked there, bought out by Lockheed Martin. If you don't know, Lockheed Martin is the biggest weapons manufacturer in the world, and also the biggest DoD contractor. Yep. And my dad was vetted by them right out of the Army with a top secret military clearance. Yep. And my godfather was vetted straight out of the Air Force with a top secret clearance into this company, doing dark projects, all black budget projects, 100%. And I think I mentioned maybe in my first video with you guys that I had no idea my father was in black all those years. I learned that less than a year ago. A man of many, many secrets. Totally. All the way. So, okay, back to my godfather. I was given to him when I was born, and I do say given, and you'll see why. I had a godfather, him, no godmother, even though he was married, this man. That was my father's best friend. My brother has no godparents. I found this really weird as I started digging into my story and really listening into what had happened to me that I had pushed away mightily because it's disturbing. Of course it is. Fucking of course it is. So dad, I learned, I have to say this, man, this is disturbing. My father knew him only a month before I was born and given to him as my godfather, with him as my godfather. I know this because when he died this spring, and he, lived down the road from me here, I moved down here because I knew I had a mission that I had to complete. An understatement, and I have completed it with my father. I was looking through some papers and it listed my godfather's name, and like it was my dad's, I don't know why he saved this. It was like references for a job, and he put my godfather's name down. It's, you know how they say, well, like, how long have you known this person? And it said August 1972 or August, September. I don't know which one. It was a month. I was born a month later. October 72. So he hardly knew this guy, but yet they were bosom buddies. I mean, possibly they knew themselves before, knew each other before, but I had asked people in my family like about that, and they said, no, they met working together. I don't know, but it just seemed very strange to me. This man, my godfather, came out of the Air Force, but he still had a private pilot's license. In the end, I'm going to cut to the chase. He was trafficking children for the deep state, and I became a part of that. My brother recalls going up in a plane with him. My brother says we were taken places by him. I have one memory clearly of going a place with my godfather. And it was I was dressed up for a pretty girl photo shoot when I was 4. Going off property, from away from I remember going away with him in the car, waving to my mom, across the lawn and waving, bye, aren't I? I'm going to go be a special girl with my godfather. Ooh, isn't this cool? And I was taken into a child pornography shoot. And yeah, I don't need to tell you how devastating that is. I mean, really, can you think of your child being taken to such a thing, coming out the other end? I mean, there are pictures from that fake shoot of me back at home after I remember coming home and on the front lawn, and I can see those pictures now and go, oh my God, I look I look a wreck. I look so uncomfortable. Can no one see that? Like, I can tell something awful has happened between leaving and coming home. So when I was in my late teens, and I started having nightmares about, I would wake up from a nightmare of being in a dank kind of basement with, there was Polaroids of me and child pornographic, photos of me as a child. Polaroids, remember Polaroids from the 70s and 80s, that were lining the walls. Like, there was no space between the pictures, and it was wall to wall, floor to ceiling. Completely me. Now, he had this man, my godfather, we're calling him, and he had me up until the age of about 7. And so this disturbs me that I don't have more memory, but I do know that he is my direct link into trauma-based mind control and the experiments in time that happened at Montauk and into Milab. Fucking direct link. And I want to share that child porn is used as a blackmail by the deep state. Probably lots of you know that, and a lot of that, more of that is coming to light, if we look at what's happening in the broader world. And there are a lot of pedos that are getting busted, and I could not be happier for them. As a survivor of all of that, yeah. So, but I can see how it's used as a kind of initiation. Once you're into it, even if you're a bystander within these deep state or military industrial complex companies like Lockheed, or there's many. It's not just them. There's so many players in this, and that's how nobody can get busted, is because it's a consortium of masterminds behind all of this. But it is a kind of initiation, and even if you're just a bystander, you are implicit. It is highly illegal, and you cannot get out. You can't say anything, especially if you have a top secret clearance. No, you're in. and they have you by the proverbial balls. So sobering. It's sobering when I really had to, again, start looking at the breadth and depth and the magnitude of this. Sure, in my own life and all that this is relating to, this dark tale. But how it relates to the bigger culture and everything going on. I mean, it really dovetails perfectly. I get why all this stuff had to come up for me now in 2020. We are in a potent portal for all dark shadow beasties and baddies to start coming up into the light and being vanquished by the light. And I'm all for that. Yeah. So a little bit more on really going into crazy here. This is crazy. The story gets stranger because you will not believe this. My godfather moved. He lives a quarter mile from me. He's an old man. Because my dad was down here, and guess what? They were still buddies in their 70s. And I think my father told him there was cheap property down here. And so he moved down here with a partner. Wow, weird. Uncomfortable? Yeah, you bet. So what did I do after I started really sinking my teeth into this, the meat of this story, and looking like head on at what had happened to me? I went and knocked on his door. Who does that? I went and knocked on his door unannounced. He's been down here 2 years, never a quarter mile from me, somebody who was actively involved, intimately involved in my life for that long. First time, you know, the first years of my life, never contacted me. And his girlfriend answered the door. And, oh, we are so glad to see you. I'm sure she knows nothing about this, but he took a really long time to come back from the back bedroom to the front of the house. My heart was pounding. And why did I do this? Okay, why did I walk into this? I needed to see close up probably how normal he looked, to prove to myself somehow that this was still real. And I wanted to, you know how I always say the body keeps this, really does keep the score of what has happened to us, even if our mind is doubting it or blocking it out or not remembering it. My God. Yeah, I started dissociating pretty quickly. And it was just, I could tell all my alarm bells were going off inside. And, you know, from a self-care perspective, we could say this was maybe not the smartest thing. I also wanted him to feel what it felt like to have me there and go, holy shit. And he was doing that. He was totally doing that. I could read it. I wanted to read him close up, you know, in person, to get a, you know, more of a psychic read on him. Because part of me thinks I'm crazy. Like maybe I made all this up. Maybe this isn't true. I'm glad I went because it did prove things. I came home and I could not get my shit together for hours afterward. You know, I was like hyperventilating. I had to lie on the floor. I was like having panic attack. And then it worked out, you know. It's intense. I'm so glad I went because something cleared for me in that. It's like, I'm onto you. I didn't say that to him. And sometimes I wish, you know, when I look back on that visit in September, I wish I would have said something. I'm onto you, man. Don't think I don't fucking know about you. Don't think I don't remember. Yeah. His son was there. His son, who lives back east, grew up in New England. He says, I remember playing with your dollhouse. He's in his 40s. I'm about 5 years older than he is. But he used to come over to our house with his mom, my godfather's wife, who is not my godmother, and play. Our moms would hang out, you know, company wives hanging out, and the kids would play together. And I have like, he gave me this big hug, like he knew me. And I was like, I don't know this guy from Adam. I don't know who this is. He said, I remember your dollhouse and we used to play with that. And it was one of my like favorite toys. And he was really a nice guy. But what happened with this is that I was able to make a contact with him, call him up the next week after he'd gone home from this visit with his dad, which it turns out was a real rarity. And then I show up there. I called him just to kind of, I never said about anything, you know, I didn't reveal anything, but I kind of was probing him about his father's work and what he remembered about his dad. He did confide in, you know, his younger brother committing suicide, and talked about his own struggles with depression and bipolar disorder and things in his family that seemed really weird. So I just wanted to share that because you really, like I say, you can't make that up. And I think there might be a final movement here with something with my godfather. This is script I'm still writing, because I have to say, one of the things about healing from dissociation and coming home is you really start feeling your feelings. And I'm enraged. That's real. That's part of healing. That's natural. That's it. You should be mad. If you're not mad about all that, like for me, this happened to me and I'm not angry, there's a problem. And I have been, you know, one of the questions, it's more of a koan or a riddle, you know, what is justice in all this? Part of it is me speaking my story and speaking the truth and not living in shadows anymore and not pretending this isn't there. But it's something I think about as the world turns and is burning with the dark matter of all this going on for so long. Children have been bought and sold and sodomized and sacrificed for millennia. And it's time that's over. And if I would name one thing that's keeping our culture down right now, it is that. It's all forms of child abuse. From the more, I don't want to call anything benign, but how a child comes into this world, if it's not met by competent caregivers who can entrain with it and teach it to feel safe in this world and that it belongs in this world, and even that it's loved in this world, then we all grow up shaky. And if we're shaky, we're divorced from our power. And if we're divorced from our power, then this deep, sick system keeps going. So, yeah, thanks for hanging out with me and listening in. I wanted to talk about healing. And the last thing, a little ha-ha at the end here, I have to say that my godfather, a very German name, was born in Germany. Came here at age 10. His father died in the war. Yeah, trauma. Whew. Bringing light to all of this. Bringing light to all of this. So healing, you know, wow. One of the things that I love about how this has played out for me is that I have psychic gifts that I use as my full-time job now. And that's what I was taken for. One of the reasons I was taken into the programs to begin with, and that I still have contact with or developed contact with these gifts later in life. You know, after I kind of fell down my rabbit hole and started meditating, like my life depended on it, so I could know the truth. All of this started, the psychic gifts came back to me. So that is one of the things that actually has helped heal me, because I have contact with higher light and higher beings and higher self, you know. And if you're carrying upper dimensional light, if you're carrying Christed light, if you're in touch with the numinous and luminous self that you are, that transcends space and time, all of those nasty thingies can't get to you anymore. You can't be infested. You can't be used as a gateway. You can't have a demon in you when you are conscious and awake and in training with life and light and the heart, the development of heart and connection to heart, which is our most powerful human, like a battery, you know, like that connects us to the earth and sky realms and primordial fire. And, you know, it's like the light from the beginning of time, the beginning of the universe, the fire from the beginning of the universe. Yeah, it's much harder for anything to kind of come in and grab you than, but But nonetheless, I mean, this is what I've described in these videos, and even in my own privacy, you know, of my own mind, you know, I go, well, this is really a lot. And how am I healing from this? Because it's an inestimable amount of betrayal in my, you know, in my history with my own family. And I mean, I did say I've been gone for a while from this channel for a reason. And this is all the things I've been processing. And I'm able to talk about it without too much. You know, I'm not experiencing like a deep agitation, or, you know, I feel pretty regulated and grounded as I'm going through this. So there's a lot. I have a lot of help from the higher realms, for sure. I have had since the start, I think, with all of this. But I will say that the infant memories that I described, where I started to tear up, that are still painful for me, really helped me to see that my nervous system had been running on fight, flight, freeze, running on that cycle of you know, the autonomic nervous system gets caught in sensing danger everywhere. You know, the survival mechanism of, you know, the tiger's coming after me, I better save myself, and I'm going to fight back, or I'm going to flee. That would have been activated for me early on and constantly. And in my case, as a child, or any child, you're not going to be able to fight off an attacker who happens to be a, you know, parent, and you're not going to be able to run away from your house down the street. So you freeze into a little ball, like I did in the kitchen as a grown-up in 2013, when my mom turned on her, you know, possession demon thing and went in and abused my niece. I froze. The whole system starts shutting down. You go into a dissociative state. Even, you know, your breath and your whole, your vital, what do you call it? Your biological systems start behaving differently. You're just supporting life at that time. Nothing else is going on. Shut down completely. So if you're living in that place of deep stress and fear, I'm unsafe when I'm safe, I'm unsafe, is the sort of narrative within the nervous system, that over a lifetime will be so depleting. And this, I raise my hand because this has happened to me. I finally saw, like intuitively, I could see, okay, this started with my mom as soon as I was born, and even in her belly, because she was so a traumatized person. The baby feeds on that trauma. You're entrained with your mother in the womb. Anyway, if I'm perceiving on some level very subtly that the world is unsafe, and that has been my case, you're running on cortisol and adrenal hormones, and all of the stress chemicals are running your system. They're running your the front of your engine all the time. Over some decades, you start to crash because you can't handle that. We're not meant to run like that. And I put two and two together and realized that's why over the past few years, my energy levels was like, I have fewer and fewer matches in the matchbook, you know, to get through the day. It was like, oh my God, you know, it's deep adrenal exhaustion, which hit me really hard after September. And I'd received all of these things, plus things about my father that I didn't talk about. Yeah, it hit me. And once I was able to connect the dots, like, oh, this is why I'm really starting to lose steam. And this is why my immune system is, your immunity goes down and you gain weight, and just, there's all these things that happen when you're starting to run on, you have been running on stress hormones for basically a lifetime because you don't feel safe. But then once I could see the clear picture of that so clearly, you know, I was able to start rehabilitating my nervous system. And that's what I've really been working with now, is I actually work with a practitioner who's, it's a somatic experiencing is what it's called. And it's to move the body out of that fight, flight, danger zone into more of that that calm, rest and digest energy that we would have when we perceive that the world is safe and the world is not scary and out to get us. and that allows our natural health to come back because we're no longer running on cortisol, adrenaline, and all of the other stress hormones. And somatic experiencing is amazing because it allows for the completion of that fight or flight impulse. Say I've got, an adult pinning me down, abusing me, and I can't at that moment, again, flee or fight. This allows because the body still contains those energies and they're bound up in the body. And we have to I have found the completion of that fight and flight, like allowing the body to regather those natural biological instincts, actually changes has changed my physiology. So I'm healing at a deeper level and coming out of that danger zone, danger zone for me being like perceiving at a very, sort of old level of my brain that there's scary, bad things are happening and they're coming for me. Even though that's not true, there's no threat, but yet my physiology is perceiving threat. I'm sure many of you, I see a lot of clients who are heavily traumatized. If this is you, check out somatic experiencing. I know lots of us we are living in a world that is based on trauma in many, many ways. I mean, look at what is happening. Our world has been traumatized by COVID and all of this fear mongering. It's putting us into survival mode. Stay at home, don't talk to people, be scared about your finances, be scared about the vaccine. There's so much fear, and what does it do? It drives us apart from each other. But anyway, the somatic experiencing has been a wonder tool for me. But I've also spent years studying, polyvagal theory and the work of Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine that are all about how trauma is stored in the body. Like, you might forget in your mind, but the trauma is inside of your system and it can be healed. It's inside the brain and our brain can heal. So there's lots of modalities that can help with that. So it's just a plug you can always Google somatic experiencing, or I prefer not Google, but an alternate search engine. So, I hope that makes sense to you. Also, what happens is I have ended up with a lot of unhealthy attachment issues or intimacy issues because, listen, look, of course I did, because nobody was safe. Who was safe? Nobody. So, I've had a lot of struggle trusting people, and I see that now in a way that wasn't as clear to me previously. Like, I live alone. I want to be alone on like 1,000 acres of land by myself. And that feels safe to me, to that damaged, scared, wounded part of me, but now it's like, oh, I'm seeking out other people. That actually gets us out of freeze in the ventral vagal part of the vagus nerve and the dorsal vagal freeze into more of social engagement, which is really healthy for us and creates a lot of good stuff in the body and helps us heal. So really simple stuff, but I truly didn't get that. I just kind of, I hadn't done that work. And I want to share something about, I'd mentioned Tyrion, my Procyon mate. Yeah, from the Light Alliance ship. I think I mentioned, was that video 3 that I mentioned him? He has come in, sometimes we meet as our light bodies together, which is really beautiful, but he, back in September, October, started seeing this wolf dog coming around, in the etheric. And I'm not really a dog person. I was like, wow, really friendly, beautiful dog. Like, I fell in love with this dog. Wolf hybrid. A lot of protective energy and also a lot of playful energy with this being. And I realized a couple days into it, because it was this constant presence that I welcomed, that it was Tyrion. He was showing up in a form that was very palpable to me, almost like a therapy dog, to help heal those intimacy wounds and give me a safe presence that was just like available light in a form that I could really consume and use just where I am right now. Beautiful. And still here hanging out with me for the audio. You could imagine that I have a wolf dog hybrid at my feet, if you like, and that would be about accurate. It has been actually really helpful. So, what else? What else? I've mentioned my mother and father from a previous lifetime. They have done amazing work with me, and having the, you know, coming from the family that I've mentioned, I would not have thought of the template for what healthy mom and dad are like. And I couldn't have cooked this up because I don't have a frame of reference for it, but they came in a couple years ago. I mentioned this before, so I'll just be brief. When I was walking out late in the forest one night, and she was on the left and he was on my right, and their presence is like so comforting. It's so stabilizing. And it brings in medicine from that lifetime in which I lived with the Crow tribe, or was a, you know, yeah, it was a, I lived with them. Those are my parents. Really potent work with them. And I've also had, in the past couple of weeks, I've had I live in Apache land, Apache territory, but also the home of, they're called, we'll call them buffalo soldiers, and Black Seminole is what they're called, but they're from West Africa. And I believe they came along the Trail of Tears, from Florida to this area, if I've got it right. Anyway, getting to the story, they are from this land, this couple that I first saw right before I moved here. And they met me right before I made the move from Colorado. They're Black African, but they came here as slaves. And the male was a buffalo soldier on this land. I live in a former military base. Can you imagine? Hasn't been a military base in a long time, since probably World War II. And yeah, I'm looking to get out of here. But they introduced themselves as native medicine keepers a long time ago to me. And they've been almost like another set of parents. He has this beautiful, beautiful, majestic, healthy male energy, safe male energy, fathering energy for me. This is not politically correct. I'm sorry, but this was the name he gave me, Darky. He has always called himself Darky. And he shows up sometimes on my right in meditation. And she first showed up in sort of she, I think, was kept at the houses on Colony Way up here that were for the fancy white people. As a slave, but then she showed me herself or her medicine from West Africa, and they have come in as medicine keepers also. I hope I explained that story clearly enough. They're just people from the land upon which my home sits. They used to live here. I'm glad they've taken me in as a friend rather than foe. I've been very fortunate in that, meeting the native people who have lived on this land before in spirit form, of course. That's what I do. So lots of that. And I'm going to read before I got to read this because I like to share a little bit of the light that I do receive. I think that's helpful. Oh, you know what? First I'm going to read, let me read this. This is brief. This is from my 9-year-old who is usually on my left side. My team has a special orientation around my body, my local form of body here as Rebecca. They're right, left, back, front. Anyway, this is my 9-year-old that is, she's very sophisticated. I may have mentioned her before, and I'm in contact with her pretty closely throughout, the days and weeks. And about all this stuff with my grandfather, she had said, I'll just read verbatim what I had transcribed from my journal. And I just call her B9, Becca 9. She looks thoughtful. And then she says, there's a lot here. I think we'll learn a lot about this. You could write a book about this. How does this relate to the stars and our connection there? Wasn't there a provision in the timeline of Earth that allowed for dark and light to be at war? Isn't this giving us a lot to look at and to understand? Look how far back it goes. We have to find the beginning and we have to see the end. So, like I said, fairly sophisticated. And she continues on. The whole bloodline from beginning to end contains this, searching for God, never finding the light within. So she's talking about that external quest for divinity, which is actually, of course, inside of us. Beautiful. I thought that was from, late August, early September, from my 9-year-old self. Beautiful. But what I was actually going to grab here was I've been having these visions from, I want to say it's the consciousness of Joan of Arc, but presenting as an angel. And I had to look this up because I didn't know much about Joan's story. I mean, she's never been that much of a big icon in my life. Certainly never had received any visions from her until a few weeks ago. She's been coming in regularly. And at first she came in as a child of about 9, wearing a muslin, auburn colored muslin, sort of peasant, sort of almost like a nightgown with buttons here, and had this bobbed haircut. And at first I couldn't tell if it was a girl or a boy. I thought it was a boy that was kind of effeminate. And she had a little taper candle and she handed it to me. I went, okay. I just bowed and said thank you and smiled at her, and I handed it back. And then she started coming in this angelic form. So I just call this Angel Joan. I know it's her consciousness that's presenting as an angelic being. And she's been coming back to give me messages and also help me and train with more of my firepower and my autonomy and my will, my choice, my power, my voice, all of those things, those action-oriented, more the fire energies, the male energies. So I'm in my Akashic records, and I'm just reading this verbatim from my transcriptions in the journal. Angel Joan lights a fire, and she as quickly as she leans in, as quickly as I see her, the fire is ignited, and it looks like a pyre. Its flames leap high into a vertical column immediately. So Angel Joan's lighting this big, inferno, like within me, or we could say in front of me. And then she continues, Joan of Arc, this is your power. It knows no beginning or end. Use it wisely. Then the flame at the base of the fire becomes blue, almost like water, like the sea, creatures swimming inside of it. Instead of death, as per a funeral pyre, I see life, brimming, teeming, life without limit, unstoppable and unquenchable. This is the eternal life fire. I know this. It is life force energy itself. It creates a live line of energy that connects earth to sky and cosmos, and it belongs to me. And Joan continues, do not doubt your worth. You are a mighty fire, beholden to no one. No man or woman is your keeper, no other being your master. Your consciousness is as vast as the sun. You belong to the sun. The solar principle is your flame. It is your true name. No enemies can reach you when you occupy its crystalline structure with your mind. For here you will see beyond time. Here you will receive the blessings of a non-polarized view. This is how you know your wisdom is true. Occupy the sun. And I have been taken into the sun so many times. The sun is this living light field it's like a gridded structure inside the sun. And then the visions continue into being surrounded not only by the sun and with a fire coming up and through me, but also a golden pyramid around me. So, and on it goes. So I feel like I've been talking 100 miles an hour. Thank you for listening and tuning in today. And I'm so glad I brought in just a bit more light and levity at the end to share, kind of equalizing the dark themes from the front of the video. And I also want to say, as we are moving forward collectively, that written inside of us, in our DNA, we are healers and shamans and medicine keepers and warriors. We have these, we could call them past lives, but they belong to all of humanity. And this is written inside of us, and this is what we have been cut off from. So we are all that. We are seers and visionaries, and we are keepers of the flame of life. It belongs to all of us, and we've been led astray and away from our power. And we can come back. Man, if I could sit here and make this video coming out of my like shy little turtle shell, you know, man, we can move mountains together. So don't forget that you, and by the way, my past life readings have been so potent recently. I can't tell you enough like how important it is to get in touch with those aspects of yourself, because you contain your own medicine. We are the medicine. We are the medicine of our times. It's all written inside of us, and they can't get it. We own it. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Oh, all right. So, thank you. Just a lot of gratitude upwelling in my heart today for you guys hanging out with me. And even though in one way I've been alone in my house with darkness falling, as I've recorded, I felt this great presence of divine beings, and also all of you holding the space for this to come home. And, you know, the other night I was saying, well, I've shared with you that I like to walk at night to check out the stars and be in the stellar energy and connect with, I mean, amazing, you know, we got Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter overhead right now, constant, beautiful energy there. And my home star Sirius, I really feel like that's where I come from, through Sirius in any case. And I had my palms up to Sirius the other night out in I have a loop that I do where I know it's out in the woods. Nobody goes there, man. It's just dark. And I walk in the dark because I have great night vision. But I looked up at Sirius and I had such a moving moment. And I started to say, may I be of service? May I be of service? May I be of service? And even now I can feel that moving through me. May I be of service? Yeah. I mean that. So an offering of this to my natal family, the bloodline, bearing all this into light. And to all the children who've experienced similar things, and all the children who are suffering, perhaps now in this moment, we're working to bring this to light and to end all of this suffering so we can all go home. Go home to that light inside and all the power I'm talking about that we already have. So holding space for humanity's great rebirthing. Thanks so much for joining me. This is Rebecca Rose, Sirius Blue. And if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, you can check out sessions at my website, RebeccaRoseBarfoot.com. There's all kinds of intuitive readings. And of course, I do inner child healing work and the past life readings, which have been so big lately. Astral journeys too, very potent right now during this gateway as we're coming up on 12/21. So in any case, thank you for listening. And if you like this video, please leave a comment or share the video. All those good things that help my little tiny channel off in the outer orbit of YouTube get a little more discovered. I really appreciate all of you. Good night.
Godeli makat ustime kemakara lovidi makadu chimekest ust makadiman deliver can get makaton di make a gun jim till you can get gun. Yella ishtuk nu neandani. And just offering in my galactic language healing and unbinding from dark forces around our planet, bringing light to all those topics which I cover in this video series, and bringing light to those who have suffered similar experiences. Truthfully, we have all suffered, for as one suffers, the whole community of the earth suffers. And always it is my intention in my video series to bring light to dark topics, bring light and liberation for the people of our human family and other races. And you can just pause and bring your awareness into the field of space around you, a sphere of light connected to earth and sky that belongs to you, and feel the light flowing there. Go on in the grace of light, bringing light into your daily life, into your family and friends and their lives. And may the light be multiplied. Thanks for being with me. This is Rebecca Rose, Sirius Blue.